everyone. Welcome to Live Interactive English. I'm Mike.
And I'm Sam.
And we are recycling on the half shell. Well, we aren't, but clever scientists are. They're using oyster shells to make your smelly feet not be so smelly. That's part of the idea, isn't it? Yeah, they're recycling the shells and using the chemicals that these shells are made of to make other wonderful things. Now, earlier I said that I like oysters, but I only really eat them in a restaurant. I got the idea you're not really a big fan.
Yeah, I don't love them.
They're kind of weird.
Yeah,
they are weird, you know.
Yeah.
I think someone actually said it was a brave man, the first man who ever ate an oyster.
I would imagine, because they kind of maybe look a little like a booger.
They look kind of
So
gray.
I don't know if I would have
They're
had
slimy. That. You kind of let them slide down your throat.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people don't like.
Yeah, but ooh, that sounds disgusting.
Okay.
But I think I'm actually going to try them tonight because
Good for you.
I want to help the environment.
Okay.
I mean, it's kind of a, does it really help the environment if I'm actually eating more? But I know that the shells are doing some really great things.
True.
So I'm going to choose that and see if we can kind of add some more shell powder to see what else we can do.
Okay, and compared to eating a steak, eating oysters are better for the environment. Have you ever shucked your own oyster?
Nope.
Ooh, you've never shucked. Okay, to shuck an oyster is to take it out of the shell. So that's an actual verb, S-H-U-C-K. Also, when you peel the leaves off corn, that's called shucking corn.
I have shucked corn.
And there's actually an oyster shucker knife. Because you got to be careful when you shuck your oyster. It's easy to kind of hurt yourself.
Yeah, I don't like knives, so I'm not going to do
Flat
it.
side on the top, curved side on the bottom. Get the knife in there and work it around the
that's
edge.
too complicated
it's a
for
little
me.
complicated. Let's get into the article. That's much simpler.
Recycled oyster shells are finding other uses as well. In gardening, the calcium content in the shells balances the soil's acid levels, which results in healthier plants. And when crushed, oyster shells make a beautiful landscaping material for walking paths and gardens. The recycled shells have also been used in reef building as points of attachment for oysters to grow upon. This allows existing reefs to be repaired or new reefs to be created. The need for reef building arises from a sad fact. Oyster reefs are being destroyed at a record rate.
All right, so let's get into our reading. So we're continuing on with recycling on the half shell part 2. And so we've been talking about what do you do with an oyster shell. So let's continue and see what else we can do. Recycled oyster shells are finding other uses as well. In gardening, the calcium content in the shells balances the soil's acid levels, which results in healthier plants.
Well, that is very important, right? The pH level or the acid-alkali level of your soil is very important. So you want to make sure that acid level or acid content isn't too high. Content is basically how much of something is in something else. Often when we're talking about going on a diet or wondering how healthy our food is, the sugar content, the fat content, the salt content is very important. There is salt in lots of food, sure, but if you add extra salt or eat foods that naturally have lots of salt, the salt content or the amount of salt in that food will be much higher. If you're on a diet, you'd want to lower the fat content and maybe also the sugar content of the food that you are eating. Less sugar in the food, healthier food. For example, the fat content of a food product is usually written on the label. Absolutely. And actually, you can know the content of things by how they're listed in the ingredients, right? The biggest content will be the first item. So if you look at chocolate, it might have chocolate and then milk and then other things after that. So the most content will be the first thing in that list. All right, so let's get back to these oyster shells. It says, and when crushed, when you crush the oyster shells make a beautiful landscaping material for walking paths and gardens.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I
So
mean,
we're not actually using what they're made of, just using that stuff.
I guess it makes sense. The shells could be kind of pretty, and when they're crushed up, maybe they, I don't know, just kind of add a little something to the landscape.
And the inside has that shiny mother of pearl kind of stuff, right? That could give little sparkles to the ground.
And so in this section, we had the verb crush. So to crush something means to kind of smash it and grind it. And so it's been totally crushed. For example, actually, I don't know if people do this in Taiwan, but in America, when we recycle aluminum cans, we used to have to crush them down to little bitty and then put them in the recycling. And so we had a can crusher in in our garage. That was like my favorite thing.
Wow.
Like, oh, let's do the recycling. I'll do it because I want to just crush all the cans.
This is my can crusher.
Oh, that works too.
Put it on the ground and stand on it.
Yeah, and so we have the example sentence, next, crush the nuts and add them to the mixture. So this is probably from a recipe, so it's explaining the next step in the recipe.
You might have a machine to crush them or just a hammer, and you just keep hitting them until you break them down into very small parts, right? You can make sand by crushing stones or something like that. All right, and so we'll use this material to landscape gardens. When we landscape something, it's kind of like gardening, but it's gardening plus kind of art or architecture, design. So you're not just saying, I'm going to have a garden. You're going to say, I'm going to have grass here and a little bit of water there and some bushes around the water and some flowers in front of the water. And I'm going to have a little hill here and the frogs are going to live there.
And a rock.
And a rock. And you're kind of laying things out in a design kind of way. In the same way an architect will design a building, a landscaper, we could talk about that as a job, will make a garden look like a park or look like a forest, right? I think a lot of people would say that if you go to Japan, those gardens and parks in Japan are beautifully landscaped, right? They've taken something and made it with human hands, but made it look like a perfect picture of nature. That's because the landscaping or the way they've landscaped it is so wonderful. For example, we hired a company to landscape our yard, not just to cut the grass and water the flowers, to make it look like a piece of art.
Yes, and so now if we continue on with our reading, we have the recycled shells have also been used in reef building as points of attachment for oysters to grow upon.
Neat.
Yes, this allows existing reefs to be repaired or new reefs to be created. The need for reef building arises from a sad fact. Oyster reefs are being destroyed at a record rate.
Yeah, as the oceans get warmer, reefs die off very, very quickly.
Yes.
So where we can rebuild them if they get damaged or die out using oyster. And it's all natural, right?
Yeah.
And oysters come from the ocean. So I don't think there are many fish out there who are going to be like, ugh, what's that? They know it's oyster stuff. It's part of the ocean anyways. And these reefs allow places for attachment for other oysters and other types of coral, of course, as well. What is attachment? Well, when you join things two things together, you attach them, okay? So an attachment is just where they are joined, the place they're joined or how they're joined or something like that. For example, screws are included inside the box for attachment of the shelf. If you're going to put the shelf on the wall, you don't just put it up there and use magic, unless you're Harry Potter. You got to put it up there and hold it with something. The screws into the wall will keep it there. It will give it a strong attachment to that wall. Let's take a quick break and then we'll be back with more about amazing oyster shells. Not the oysters, just the shells.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。今天继续来看看回收蚵壳的其他用途。首先是用在园艺，蚵壳里面的钙含量可以平衡土壤酸碱值，让植物更健康。那么蚵壳被压碎时，还可以当园艺造景的材料。好，单字 content 当名词表示含量、成分。那么 crush 当动词表示压扁、压碎。这时候老师用到 smash 这个动词 ，smash 表示打碎啊、打破或是撞击的意思。下一个单字 landscape Landscape 当动词表示造景或者是做陵园美化，我们在后面加上 r 变成 landscaper， 那就可以表达园艺景观设计师。好，再来看蚵壳另一个用途是用在造礁，作为牡蛎生长的附着点。那文中这个 reef 就是礁，我们说那个珊瑚礁的礁，或者是说暗礁啊、礁脉的意思。像 coral reef 就表示珊瑚礁。那我们的单字 attachment 它是个名词，则表示附着、连接的意思。课文接着写到，造礁的需求源自一个令人难过的事实：牡蛎礁现在正以破纪录的速度遭到破坏。那这边3个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，来看第一个重点是 arise， 它是指产生、出现，那它是不及物动词，三态是 arise、arose、arisen， 后面常常会接 from 加名词，或是接 out of 加名词，去表达有什么产生，有什么引起。例如 ，the quarrel arose from a misunderstanding， 那场争吵是因为误会而引起的。第二个重点是现在进行式的被动语态，那它的结构是 be 动词加上 being， 再加上过去分词 pp， 用来表达现在正在被怎么样，像是 3D printing is being used in many different fields， 3D 列印正被运用在各种不同领域当中。好，来看下一个重点是 at a record rate， 表示以创纪录的速度。那么 record 在这边是当形容词来形容创纪录的，用法呢是要摆在要修饰的名词前方。例如 their sales are increasing at a record rate， 他们的业绩正以创纪录的速度在成长。那我们接回到课文中。
The main benefit of oyster reefs is that they help prevent flooding by acting as natural seawalls, which cost less and can withstand more damage than traditional concrete seawalls. A number of major oyster reef projects have been started globally, and many have achieved great success. Besides acting as seawalls, oyster reefs can help clear away pollution because oysters purify water. In fact, a single adult oyster can clean more than 180 liters of water per day. With a little creativity, people are making oyster shells nearly as valuable as the oysters themselves. But the true value of solutions like these is that they are means to progress toward a sustainable future.
All right, so we're back with our article learning about amazing uses of oyster shells after you've eaten the oyster. You got to do that first, yeah. Otherwise, just leave the oyster in the shell. And
then, you just put it back and let it go live its life.
Yeah, for sure. But once you've taken the oyster out, what do you do with the shell? You don't throw it away. You do these amazing things. Now, we were talking about how crushed oyster shells can be used to build reefs, new reefs, for fish and for coral to attach themselves to. Because the main benefit of oyster reefs is that they help prevent flooding by acting as natural seawalls, which cost less and can withstand more damage than traditional concrete seawalls. Yeah, if you've been to lots of places actually around Taiwan, you'll see these seawalls, and it's basically probably concrete that they poured into the ocean. They built a wall to stop big storms and big waves from washing the water ashore, damaging buildings or damaging beaches and things like that. Now that's fine, but concrete is not natural in the ocean or anywhere. Oyster is, so why not use natural material like oyster shells to make these seawalls, and in the end, the seawalls work better than the ones that are concrete.
Yeah, and so we have this word concrete, so like you said, it's not this kind of natural occurring thing because it is a man-made thing where we are taking gravel or sand or rocks and other things like this, and we're crushing them up and we're mixing them together with water, and then it's that, a lot of you guys probably already know concrete. It's kind of this gray mixture of those different things, and it starts out kind of wet. And then when you leave it in a mold or wherever you're putting it or on the ground, and then it will harden over time and it becomes very hard, and that is concrete. I know in Taiwan a lot of walls and floors are made of concrete, so a lot of houses are very cold. And so that is how we use this in our example sentence. The concrete floor is very cold, so you might want to put on some slippers.
Yeah, concrete's very useful. It's kind of like man-made liquid rock.
Yeah.
We can shape it into all sorts of things, but it's not good for the environment. I think even after it's made, it gives off like CO2 or something like that. It can be pretty bad for the environment, but it's cheap, it's useful, but maybe not the best thing, especially to put it into the ocean when there are other natural options.
Yeah, so using our oyster shells as an oyster reef is very economically and environmentally practical.
Absolutely.
And so let's continue on and see what else we can learn about these. So we have a number of major oyster reef projects have been started globally, and many have achieved great success. Besides acting as seawalls, oyster reefs can help clear away pollution because oysters purify water. Yeah.
True.
Yeah, so we've got all these great natural benefits to using them as the natural seawall. And we also can see this. In fact, a single adult oyster can clean more than 180 liters of water per day.
One little oyster can do all that? That is incredible. So they kind of take the water in, and by going through their body, the water gets cleaned and they spit out clean water. So that's good for us too, and more importantly, good for the oceans and the fish and all the other things that live in it. With a little creativity, we read, people are making oyster shells nearly as valuable as the oysters themselves. And oysters in a restaurant can be quite expensive. So if we're talking about how the shells are valuable, this is serious money. But the true value of solutions like these is that they are a means to progress toward a sustainable future. They are a way for us to move forward and have a better, cleaner, healthier future, not only for us, but for the whole planet.
Yeah, and that's been a very big thing in the last, well, I don't know, probably 10, 20 years or so. Is like we're trying to get to this level of having everything be sustainable because, you know, the resources on the earth are not, they're not infinite. They will eventually disappear unless we make things sustainable. And so using this way of using the oyster shells to make them kind of make the process of eating the oysters a sustainable process is a very good thing. And this took some creativity to come up with, and creativity means like something that is very imaginative, and it takes you kind of think about things in a different way, in a kind of a wonderful way. So if you're a creative person, then you might be really good at art because you see things a little bit differently and you can create a lot of different beautiful things. And so we've got our example sentence. It takes a lot of creativity to feed a family without spending much money. And so obviously this makes sense because if you're not spending a lot of money, you might be buying the similar ingredients again and again. So you need some creativity to kind of create different dishes and make sure your family doesn't feel too bored.
Exactly. Yeah, you're using the same things, but you got to find new and exciting and fun ways to turn it into delicious food. So here's our what do you think question. Can you think of any other creative ways to recycle or to reuse or recycle oyster shells? We've had a couple of days of good examples. Can you think of anything else that the scientists haven't thought of?
I mean, honestly, I don't think I could unless I said something like, I think a good way to recycle or reuse an oyster shell would be to put it into some kind of art. Okay. So then at least I don't have to think on the chemistry side or the scientific side.
That's kinda
I could
hard.
just think of like maybe you work it into a painting or a sculpture or something. That's all I could think of.
Okay, no, that's definitely a good thing you could use. The shape of the oyster, the colors inside and outside. There would be a lot of options there.
Maybe some jewelry.
Some jewelry too, absolutely, yeah. There's lots of things you can do with it. Obviously, if you're a scientist, you'll come up with more creative and more amazing things to do with your oyster shells, but it's a good lesson to us all. There are a lot of things in the world, oyster shells. I remember we did an article about banana peels, and now they're using banana peels to make amazing things. Things that we used to think of as just garbage can actually be really useful and help the environment as well. So that's a good way to think about the world going forward. Thanks everyone for joining us. Maybe we'll see you down at the oyster bar, maybe not, but we appreciate you spending some time with us, and we'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
牡蛎胶的主要好处是可以作为天然的防泼堤，它的花费比较少，而且比传统的水泥防泼堤能承受更多的损坏。好，那么单字 concrete 在这边当形容词，形容混凝土的。好，那么老师讲解时用到 gravel 这个字 ，gravel。gravel 表示沙砾或是碎石，还有用到 mold 这个字 mold 当名词可以表达模具或是模子。那么课文最后写到说，凭着一点创意，人们正在让蚵壳几乎跟牡蛎本身一样有价值。况且地球资源并非无穷无尽，我们需要用永续方法来解决问题。Sam 老师这时候用到 infinite 这个字 infinite 是形容无限的、无尽的。那我们的单字 creativity 则表示创意、创造力。这边一个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，我们来看这个重点是句型 as 形容词 as 或者是 as 副词 as 表示和什么什么一样怎么样，那这是形容词或副词的原级比较用法。第二个 as 后面可以接子句，那子句当中的动词如果跟前面相同的话，你就可以省略，或者是用助动词代替。例如 Josh is as tall as his brother， 那么后面要不要再接 is 都可以，那通常会省略。Josh 跟他哥哥一样高。I don't drink coffee as often as Tim does。后面这个 does 要不要省略都可以。我不像 Tim 一样常喝咖啡。好了，那么以上这些讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
Recycled oyster shells are finding other uses as well. In gardening, the calcium content in the shells balances the soil's acid levels, which results in healthier plants. And when crushed, oyster shells make a beautiful landscaping material for walking paths and gardens. The recycled shells have also been used in reef building as points of attachment for oysters to grow upon. This allows existing reefs to be repaired or new reefs to be created. The need for reef building arises from a sad fact. Oyster reefs are being destroyed at a record rate. The main benefit of oyster reefs is that they help prevent flooding by acting as natural seawalls, which cost less and can withstand more damage than traditional concrete seawalls. A number of major oyster reef projects have been started globally, and many have achieved great success. Besides acting as seawalls, oyster reefs can help clear away pollution because oysters purify water. In fact, a single adult oyster can clean more than 180 liters of water per day. With a little creativity, people are making oyster shells nearly as valuable as the oysters themselves. But the true value of solutions like these is that they are means to progress toward a sustainable future.
Hello, I'm Matt.
I'm Stephen.
Today we're going to play Guess the Bear. We each have 3 cards with sentences on them where the vocabulary words or phrases are replaced with the word bear. And we each have 1 minute to try to guess all 3 words or phrases.
I'm going to win this time.
Yeah? Okay, well you can go first then.
All right.
All right, ready? Let's go. Okay, first one is an adjective.
Okay.
The warehouse has bare floors and walls. Bare structures can get cold inside easily.
Empty. Vacant. Spacious.
The warehouse has bare floors and walls.
Bare.
Bare structures can get cold inside easily.
I don't know. Next one.
Okay. Next one is a verb. The falling tree bared the car. He bared the insect with his shoe.
Hit. Smacked. Crashed.
Well, say that one again.
Clashed.
What was that last? No,
Clash. Crash.
not quite like that.
I don't know. Next one.
Next one is a noun. The movie contains explicit bear. The bear of this article was controversial.
Material. Subjects. Images. Content.
Yes, content.
Oh my gosh, I got one.
Okay, I think.
All right. First 2.
The first one was concrete.
Ugh.
The warehouse has concrete floors and walls. Concrete structures can get cold inside easily. The next one, you were so close, you said crash, I believe, but it was crush. So the falling tree crushed the car. He crushed the insect with his shoe.
Okay, I'll take it. That's fine. Okay, let's go.
All right, my turn. Okay.
All right, this is a noun. Young animals have a strong bear to their mother. Number 2. After many years, she had an bear to the old place.
Connection.
An bear to the old place.
Attraction. Let's try the next one.
Okay, all right, this is a verb. They bared the old yard into something pretty. Number 2. The government bared the park beautifully.
The old yard. They into something.
Next one.
Okay.
Okay, this is a noun. Even as a child, the artist was full of bear. Number 2. This sculpture took a lot of bear.
Imagination. Wonder. What's creativity?
Oh my gosh, you got it on the last 2 seconds. Okay, well, they bared the old yard into
Pruned?
Okay.
I don't know.
All right, so that one, the first one that you didn't get but almost got was attachment. Young animals have a strong attachment to their mother.
right.
And the second one was after many years, she had an attachment to the old place.
Okay.
I even tried to give you an, like really
Yeah,
obviously.
I know.
Because I'm
That's
really
why I said
nice.
attraction.
Yeah. All right, and then the other one was landscape. They landscaped the old yard into something pretty, and the government landscaped the park beautifully.
Okay.
It's okay. You only got one like I did. We're tied.
See you next time.